In a courtroom packed wall-to-wall with journalists, influencers, and political junkies hungry for spectacle, Melania Trump sat stone-faced behind her legal team. Jasmine Crockett sat across from her calm, unreadable arms folded like a woman who'd already done the math. The witness took the stand. Melania's star, hand-picked and prepped a soft-spoken former aide, turned character witness. The room leaned in. The prosecutor asked the question. A pause. A blink, then the witness answered. And in less than 9 seconds, she detonated the foundation of Melania's lawsuit, not with an accusation, but with a truth she didn't even realize she was telling. The courtroom fell into stunned silence. A reporter dropped her pen. A man in the gallery whispered, "Wait, what did she just say?" Even Melania's legal team looked away. And Jasmine? Jasmine didn't flinch. She didn't smile. Not yet. Just the slightest flicker at the corner of her mouth. A micro-expression. Surgical. Deliberate. The judge leaned forward, brow furrowed. Cameras clicked. The moment hit social media within minutes. But those 9 seconds, that raw, unfiltered collapse, had already entered political lore. Not because it was scandalous, but because it was real. Because a woman sued another woman over words, and those words collapsed under the weight of truth when no one was supposed to be looking. Melania Trump had come to court to protect her name, but in her attempt to bury a critique, she'd handed Jasmine Crockett the ultimate mic. And Crockett? She didn't need to shout. She didn't need to argue. She let the story tell itself. But how did we get here? How did the First Lady turned ghost reappear with legal fire only to see her legacy evaporate in a single sentence from her own side? What pushed Jasmine Crockett into this spotlight, and what did she know that no one else did? This wasn't just a case. It was a reckoning. A reckoning between truth and power. Between legacy and lived experience. But rewind just 6 weeks earlier, and you'll see how a single lawsuit set the stage for total collapse. The filing hit the wire on a Tuesday morning, no warning, no leaks, just boom. Melania Trump versus Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Defamation. The claim? That Crockett, in an on-air interview just 3 weeks prior, had made knowingly false and damaging remarks that impugned the character of the former First Lady. Within hours, it was the headline across every outlet. Melania sues rising Democratic star. Crockett faces legal fire from Trump family. A defamation showdown that could get ugly. But something didn't add up. The quote in question was barely inflammatory by modern standards. Crockett hadn't named Melania directly. She'd referenced the hypocrisy of those who profit from silence while the nation burns. It was political commentary sharp, yes, but not uncommon. So why the lawsuit? Why now? At first, the internet laughed it off. Melania finally speaks in a subpoena? Is this performance art? But behind the memes and mockery, something darker stirred. Crockett took to X the same day. Some folks weaponize wealth. I weaponize truth. I'll see y'all in court. Calm, direct, no panic, no retreat. And that's when the lines were drawn. Some rallied to Melania's side, elite voices in tailored suits declaring that decorum must be defended. That unchecked rhetoric from radical freshmen had consequences. Others saw the pattern. The rich suing the real. A woman long praised for her mystery now using it as a sword. And then there were those who asked quietly, fearfully, is this what powerful women do to each other? Was this personal vendetta wrapped in legal parchment? Or a prelude to something far more coordinated? Because buried in the lawsuit, buried deep, was language that didn't sound like Melania. It referenced legislative overreach. It warned of damage to institutional femininity. It was academic, even aggressive. It didn't match her voice. That's when people started asking, who actually wrote this? Who wants this fight? And why pick Jasmine? Crockett wasn't just another congresswoman. She was an organizer, a civil rights attorney, a freshman firebrand with a loyal base and an unapologetic tone. She had earned her seat with sweat and scars, not dynastic handshakes. So why her? Why now? Crockett herself hinted at the oddity in a follow-up interview. If this is about dignity, then let's talk about what dignity really means, not just in press releases, but in public service. Measured, dismissive, ready. She didn't lean into victimhood. She leaned into purpose. And still, the noise grew. Talk shows spiraled. Commentators bickered. The nation watched, divided. One side cried defamation, the other smelled desperation. And in between it all stood two women, one once cloaked in privilege, the other armored in principle. But here's the twist. The lawsuit wasn't just a lawsuit because, when we started digging into Melania's legal strategy, we found a name that changed everything. And with it, a whole new motive came into focus. After the White House doors closed behind her, Melania Trump didn't fade into obscurity, she curated it. While other former First Ladies stepped into global causes, memoirs, or public service, Melania chose something else entirely. Mystery. She rarely spoke, rarely appeared, and when she did, it was wrapped in pristine photo ops, carefully filtered, captioned with vague aphorisms about elegance, grace, or strength. To her followers, she became an icon of restraint. The quiet queen, the anti-Michelle, the anti-Hillary, a woman who didn't need to shout to be powerful. But silence isn't the same as stillness. And what Melania kept quiet, she also kept tightly controlled. Behind the veneer of privacy was a growing trail of litigation, lawsuits against bloggers who speculated about her past, threats of legal action against publishers who hinted at anything she deemed unsavory. She'd sued a British tabloid for implying she once worked in adult entertainment, sued a Maryland blogger for spreading false and defamatory statements, and won, and the NDA's countless, chilling, legally binding. Staffers, stylists, interns. Even a former friend, Stephanie Winston Wolkoff, found herself in court after publishing Melania and Me, a book that dared to reveal how curated the image truly was. Each case carried the same through line: image, brand, legacy. She wasn't trying to tell her story. She was trying to erase anything that conflicted with the one she'd approved. But there was always a disconnect. Take the Be Best campaign, a strangely titled anti-bullying initiative launched, while her husband unleashed nightly tirades on social media, or her infamous jacket on a visit to a detention center housing migrant children. "I really don't care, do you?" When questioned, her response was vague, evasive. "It's just a jacket." But for someone so obsessed with image, the message was loud, and those moments lingered. The stiff smiles, the eye rolls, the swats, the awkward pauses in interviews. They added weight to a question the public kept asking: who is she really protecting? Herself or something else? Insiders painted her as precise, demanding, cold but loyal to her version of order. She wasn't drawn to chaos. She was allergic to mess. And yet, she had married the most chaotic man in modern political history. Still, she survived it all, untouched, unscathed, and, for a while, mythologized. But Jasmine Crockett's words punctured that myth, even if unintentionally, because Crockett didn't target Melania. She questioned a system, one that rewarded silence over service, appearances over accountability. But for Melania, that was enough. She wasn't protecting her reputation. She was defending a persona, one carefully built, silently preserved, and, now publicly challenged. The lawsuit wasn't about defamation. It was about dominance, about showing that even in silence she could strike. But this time, she picked the wrong target. Jasmine Crockett didn't come from clubs and columns. She came from courtrooms and protests. She wasn't playing the optics game, she was playing for justice. And more importantly, she wasn't alone. The public that once marveled at Melania's mystique was beginning to question it. How can someone demand dignity but hide behind legal threats? How can someone promote kindness but punish criticism? How? Can someone claim elegance and yet silence other women? For years, Melania's strategy worked. Her detachment became her defense. Her quietness made her untouchable. But Crockett's presence, loud, proud, and utterly unbothered, cracked the facade, because Crockett didn't blink. She didn't flinch. And she wasn't afraid to call curated silence what it really was: complicity. And now, with the world watching, Melania's controlled legacy was no longer under glass. It was under fire. And when she picked Jasmine Crockett as her target, she picked the wrong woman before the headlines, before the trending hashtags and primetime interviews. Before she stood in a courtroom facing the weight of legacy and litigation, Jasmine Crockett was just a girl with fire in her chest and no intention of asking for permission. Born and raised in Dallas, Texas, Crockett didn't grow up expecting power. She grew up surrounded by what it meant to live without it. She saw communities ignored, promises broken, systems that punished the poor and praised the powerful. And while others turned away, she took notes. She went to law school not to climb ladders, but to break locks, the kind that kept people out of justice. As a civil rights attorney, she didn't chase prestige. She chased pain and fought it. Her early cases weren't glamorous. They were gritty. Police brutality, housing discrimination, voter suppression. Cases that drained the soul but sharpened the purpose. There was one courtroom story her staff still tells. A young black man wrongly accused, barely 19. The prosecutors had a narrative. Crockett had truth. She didn't raise her voice. She raised evidence. She dismantled the timeline, exposed the inconsistencies, and when the verdict came back not guilty, she didn't celebrate. She exhaled because for her, justice wasn't a win. It was a responsibility, and she carried that responsibility to the State House. In 2021, Crockett was elected to the Texas House of Representatives. In a state known for suppressing voices like hers, she made sure hers echoed. Loud, relentless. She filibustered. She protested. She walked out when voter suppression bills threatened her people. She was mocked, minimized, interrupted, and she didn't blink. And then, in 2022, she made the jump. Congress. Washington wasn't ready for her. The suits whispered. The cameras lingered. They tried to box her in, reduce her to the loud one, the angry one, the one with the hair. But Jasmine knew who she was. She'd earned her voice, and she used it. On the House floor, she broke down policy like a professor and dragged bigotry like a poet. Her speeches trended. Her metaphors cut deep. Her clapbacks became viral currency not because they were sassy, but because they were sharp, true, surgical. She never chased controversy. It chased her. So when Melania Trump filed that lawsuit, Jasmine didn't scramble. She prepared, not out of anger, out of duty, because she understood what it meant not just for her, but for every woman told to sit down, be quiet, and smile while being sued into silence. She met with her legal team in sweatpants and sneakers, flipping through binders between community events. She took calls from mentors, elders, and even strangers. Messages poured in from young girls in the Bronx, organizers in Oakland, grandmothers in Georgia. You're fighting for all of us. That's when it clicked. This wasn't about defamation. This was about erasure. Erasure of dissent. Erasure of authenticity. Erasure of women who don't conform, who speak without apology, who remind America of the promises it keeps breaking. Jasmine Crockett wasn't going to let that happen. She didn't hire a flashy PR firm. She didn't run to the cameras. She got to work, and on the eve of the trial, she posted just one line on social media. I'll bring the facts. You bring the popcorn. No panic, no performance, just purpose, because for Jasmine, the courtroom wasn't foreign. It was familiar, sacred. She didn't fear the gavel. She respected it. And when the cameras swarmed, when reporters shouted questions, when the spectacle reached a fever pitch, she stayed rooted, grounded. She remembered her first case. She remembered her grandmother's prayers. She remembered the young man who once hugged her outside a courthouse and said, "You made me feel like I mattered." That was why she showed up. That was why she fought. She wasn't trying to win a media war. She was trying to protect a principle. Truth isn't a brand. Justice isn't a trend. And dignity? Dignity is earned, not bought, not inherited, not protected by NDAs or curated through silence. So when she walked into court that morning, head high, eyes forward, heart steady, she wasn't just ready to defend herself. She was ready to expose everything. The room buzzed with tension. Not loud, no shouting, no chaos. Just the quiet hum of anticipation that only power and consequences can create. Reporters filled the benches, their thumbs hovering over phones. A court sketch artist stared at a blank pad, unsure where to begin. On one side sat Jasmine Crockett, poised, unshaken. Dressed not to impress, but to remind. A calm presence in a storm designed to rattle. She exhaled once, slowly, and waited. On the other side, Melania Trump. Draped in ivory, posture perfect, eyes fixed somewhere above the judge's head, detached, unreadable. Not nervous, not present. Something else. The judge entered. The room rose. The trial began. Opening statements were surgical. Melania's legal team painted her as a private citizen subjected to undue harm. They called her a mother, a humanitarian, a woman unfairly weaponized by public office. But as the words poured out, so did the contradictions. They claimed Crockett's comment was targeted, yet never specified how. They argued reputational harm, but couldn't cite lost deals, damages, or even public backlash. They used buzzwords like institutional femininity and moral degradation, but offered no proof of injury. Crockett's lead attorney stood, turned slowly to the jury, and said, "This is not a lawsuit. It's a silencing campaign wrapped in silk." He walked them through Melania's timeline. Her pattern of lawsuits, her selective outrage, her brand of vengeance by paperwork. And then he read Crockett's quote aloud. Just once, calmly, "Some folks profit from silence while the nation burns." He paused, looked at the judge, then looked at the jury. If that's defamation, then truth itself is on trial. The judge didn't move, but the court stenographer glanced up just for a second. Melania's team shifted in their seats. One lawyer's pen tapped once, twice, then stopped entirely. Crockett remained still, a statue of defiance and discipline. And then came the evidence. Emails, timeline gaps, prior statements from Melania's PR reps that contradicted the emotional damage she now claimed. The contradictions weren't loud. They didn't need to be. They echoed in the spaces between arguments. Glances were exchanged, quiet ones, between co-counsel, between the jury. Even the judge tilted his head, ever so slightly, during a cross-examination that drew out Melania's own contradictions from a magazine interview just 3 months prior. "Are you saying you didn't read that quote?" "I don't recall, but your publicist responded to it the next day." "That was their choice." The crowd didn't gasp, but the tension shifted, like a chair creaking under too much weight. Crockett's attorney leaned into the silence, not to gloat, but to let it sit. Melania sat still, her expression unchanged, her eyes glassy, distant. Was it strategy, detachment, or something else? And, through it all, Jasmine Crockett never said a word. She didn't need to. Her stillness spoke louder than testimony. Her calmness held more power than any outburst. She didn't come to fight. She came to show. But even as the case began to wobble, Melania's team had one last card, a move they'd saved for maximum impact. A person they believed could anchor the emotion, reframe the narrative, restore sympathy. Then, Melania's team made a critical move calling their star witness. And that's when everything started to crack. Her name was Darla Kendrick. Polished. Blonde. Former communications advisor to the office of the First Lady. The kind of person whose teeth always show in a smile, whose posture screams media training, whose entire vibe exudes confidence curated for high-stakes testimony. She was Melania's ace, the star witness meant to humanize the plaintiff, to show that the damage was real, and above all, that Crockett's words were not just reckless, they were cruel. She took the stand in heels that didn't make a sound and adjusted the microphone with the grace of someone who'd done this before. Her eyes swept the courtroom like a lighthouse casting light only where she wanted people to look. Melania sat straighter as Darla began. Her lawyers finally exhaled. For a moment it worked. Darla spoke calmly. Described Melania as wounded by the remark. Shocked, she said. Deeply hurt. She described meetings canceled, calls unanswered, an emotional retreat from public life following Crockett's interview. Crockett's team let her talk. They didn't object. They didn't interrupt. They just listened and waited. Then came cross-examination. Crockett's attorney approached with a single legal pad and no pen. The jury leaned in. Ms. Kendrick, he began, you mentioned the plaintiff withdrew from public life due to Representative Crockett's statement. When exactly did that withdrawal begin? Darla blinked. Almost immediately, within 48 hours. You're certain? Yes. Can you clarify the date? Yes. The statement was made on March 18th. By March 20th, Mrs. Trump had canceled all public-facing engagements. The lawyer nodded slowly, then walked to the evidence screen. A single tweet appeared. Melania Trump official, March 24th, 9:02. Am excited to announce my appearance at the International Women's Leadership Forum in April. We must uplift each other, not tear each other down. He turned back to Darla. You're familiar with this tweet? Darla paused. Yes, I believe so. And it was posted after the supposed withdrawal? Yes, but... And she announced a public appearance, did she not? Yes, but context matters. He nodded again. Of course. Let's explore context. Click. A second post appeared. Same day. Different platform. A photo. Melania smiling at a Miami gala. Caption. Grateful to support young women in leadership. Integrity always wins. Ms. Kendrick, the attorney asked quietly, was this event private? No. Was it on Mrs. Trump's public schedule? Yes. And was it attended by media? Yes. He stepped closer. No raise in tone, no flair. Just steel. Is it fair to say that on the day following her supposed emotional withdrawal, Mrs. Trump publicly confirmed a major appearance and attended another? Darla swallowed. Yes. And do you still maintain under oath that Representative Crockett's words caused her to retreat from public life? A long pause. Then, in one breath, too fast, too instinctual to retract. I mean, not really. She just didn't like it. Gasps. There it was. 9 seconds. From the first question to the fatal phrase, not really, she just didn't like it. In 9 seconds, the core of Melania's case, harm, damage, retreat, vanished. The courtroom froze. Crockett. A woman in the gallery blinked like she'd missed it. A juror adjusted his glasses. The court reporter paused her keystrokes mid-word. Crockett leaned forward. Just slightly. The corner of her lip turned. Not a smirk. Not a smile. Just gravity. Giving way to justice. Her attorney turned back toward the bench, casually flipping the legal pad shut. Darla tried to recover. What I meant was, but the spell had already broken. Melania's lawyers shuffled their notes furiously. One leaned toward her, whispering. She shook her head sharply. The judge raised an eyebrow. No words, just a look. The kind of look that says, we're past the point of saving this. In the back row, a political blogger mouthed, "Oh my God." The moment was replayed within minutes on every platform. 9 seconds of footage, a transcript overlaid in bold, a clock ticking in the corner, a headline, "Witness implodes. Melania's lawsuit just died in 9 seconds." Outside the courtroom, the crowd buzzed. Reporters clutched their phones, typing furiously. Producers screamed for live hits. Legal analysts on cable called it an implosion, an unforced error, a turning point. Inside, Crockett remained silent. Not triumphant, not smug, just steady, because she hadn't come for theater. She had come for the truth. And the truth, raw, inconvenient, undeniable, had just broken through. It wasn't just a legal win. It was moral vindication. The kind of moment you don't manufacture. The kind of moment that happens when you refuse to be silent, when you trust the truth to carry its own weight. For years, Melania Trump had built a brand on polished detachment, on carefully manicured dignity. But dignity doesn't crack under cross-examination. Dignity doesn't evaporate in 9 seconds. Melania sat frozen. Her lawyers spoke in hushed tones. Darla was dismissed from the stand, her smile finally gone. Crockett's attorney looked to the judge. No further questions. And just like that, the spell was broken. But the courtroom reaction was just the beginning. The internet would soon explode. It didn't take long. The 9-second clip hit Twitter like a lightning strike, racking up 1 million views before lunch and 5 million by nightfall. The moment Darla Kendrick let the words slip, "I mean, not really, she just didn't like it," became instant digital folklore. Crockett crushed, it trended globally. A side-by-side meme hit Instagram within the hour. One panel of Melania blinking. In disbelief, the other of Jasmine Crockett's composed stare under the caption, "When truth walks in wearing heels." TikTok lit up. Creators stitched the clip with slow-motion edits, heartbeat soundtracks, and captions like, 9 seconds. That's all it took. She didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She knew. One creator added cinematic flair, grainy footage, courtroom, echoes, a countdown timer, and ended the video with a whisper, "This is how you dismantle an empire." Calmly. Within hours, legal analysts were chiming in. CNN's top trial commentator called the moment case-destroying. MSNBC's weekend anchor replayed the clip 4 times, each with a different lawyer weighing in. Even a conservative pundit, clearly squirming, admitted on air, "This isn't a good look." That witness may have just handed Crockett the win, but it wasn't just the media. The internet itself became a theater of celebration. Comments poured in by the second. "That's not a mic drop. That's a gavel slam. Justice in real time. I felt that in my bones." Melania built her brand on silence. Jasmine built hers on truth. The poise, the patience, the payoff. Chef's kiss. By the end of the day, Crockett's follower count had surged by over 200,000. Her Act Blue page crashed. Too many donations flooding in at once. Campaign staff scrambled to stabilize servers. The hashtags kept multiplying. Jasmine, justice. Darla did what silent, no more, even celebrities got in on. Ava DuVernay reposted the clip with the caption, "That's how a queen moves in court." Kerry Washington tweeted, "Let black women lead, period." Lin-Manuel Miranda called it, "the cleanest cross-examination collapse I've ever seen, Hamilton-worthy." Meanwhile, on the Hill, reactions varied. Some House members reposted Crockett's courtroom stills with quiet solidarity. Others, especially those who'd once dismissed her as too loud or too online, stayed silent. That silence spoke volumes, but Crockett didn't react online. No tweets, no threads, no victory lap. She posted just one photo, her walking out of the courthouse, flanked by supporters, head high. Caption: "Truth doesn't need a PR team." The comments flooded in again. "I've never seen a more graceful takedown. You're fighting for all of us. You didn't just win the moment. You won us." And they were right, because it wasn't just a courtroom win. It was a cultural one. Crockett didn't just survive a lawsuit. She flipped the script. She proved that authenticity still matters, that poise is power, that silence can be broken, and that truth, once spoken, doesn't shrink back into whispers. Her team received thousands of emails, young law students asking to intern, mothers thanking her for being unbothered and unbreakable, even former Melania supporters saying, simply, "I get it now." One viral post said it best. What Crockett did wasn't loud. It was louder. It was undeniable. And yet, through all of it, the clips, the comments, the coverage, Jasmine remained focused, because while the world cheered the collapse of a lie, she was already crafting what came next. But Jasmine didn't gloat. What she said next would turn a courtroom victory into a national message. The press was waiting. Dozens of cameras lined the courthouse steps. Boom mics hovered. Phones rolled. Commentators clutched their scripts, ready to spin whatever Jasmine Crockett gave them. But when she emerged radiant in royal blue, no podium, no notes, the noise dimmed. She didn't wave. She didn't smile wide. She simply stood. And then she spoke. "I want to thank the court," she began, voice measured but unmistakably resolute. "Because today, truth got its say." Click, click, click. The camera shutters fired like applause. This wasn't just about me, and frankly, it was never really about her. Reporters leaned in. Some expected retaliation. Others braced for a victory lap. Instead, Crockett gave them something else entirely, a masterclass in dignity. This was about whether public service comes with a price tag, whether speaking truth to power comes with a punishment. And I think the answer is clear. She gestured, ever so slightly, to the courthouse behind her. We are in a time when optics matter more than action, when curated silence is mistaken for elegance, and authenticity is treated like a threat. But let me be clear, you can't silence truth with lawsuits, the crowd murmured, stirred. Legacy isn't what you build in court, she said, locking eyes with the front row of cameras. It's what you build in people, in service, in the stories they'll tell long after you're gone. She paused. Let it breathe. My grandmother used to say, "A clean heart makes a loud truth." I didn't come here to destroy anyone. I came here to defend the right to speak, for those who are never in these rooms, who don't have lawyers or legacies or headlines. One reporter asked about Melania softly. "Do you think she'll respond?" Crockett didn't flinch. "She already has," she said. "With the lawsuit, with the silence. That was her choice." Another asked if she planned to counter-sue. Crockett shook her head. "No, I'm not here to keep score. I'm here to serve. And this chapter, this courtroom is closed." That was the moment. No victory dance. No gloating, just a woman grounded in clarity, rising above the noise without ever raising her voice. And in that restraint, she said everything. Echoes of Shirley Chisholm rang in her tone, glints of Coretta's grace, the fire of Barbara Jordan. Not because she imitated them, but because she carried them with her. And the people watching felt it. A teenager in Oakland live-streamed her reaction. "I've never felt more proud to be black and loud." A veteran in Georgia tweeted, "That's leadership. No cape, just conviction." A grandmother in Michigan wrote, "This is who we raise our daughters to be." Crockett didn't just win the case. She reframed the moment. She turned a petty lawsuit into a public sermon. She turned a 9-second courtroom collapse into a 700-word manifesto on dignity. And as her team guided her down the steps, the crowd parted. Not out of obligation, but out of reverence. And as for Melania, she left court without a word. But the silence spoke louder than anything she's ever said. 9 seconds. That's all it took to tear a hole in a narrative that had been stitched together with silence, guarded by lawyers, and sold as elegance. In just 9 seconds, a legacy, built on control, cracked under the weight of truth. Melania Trump's lawsuit wasn't just a legal action. It was an attempt to remind the world who held the stage. But Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. She didn't match silence with silence. She met it with clarity, and in the end, clarity won. This wasn't about drama. It wasn't about celebrity. It was about a deeper battle between those who protect power and those who speak for the people power forgets. A woman tried to weaponize reputation. Another used reason. And history once again favored truth. So ask yourself, what echoes louder? In the end, curated silence or earned courage? Because when the cameras go dark, when the lawyers leave the room, and when the dust settles, it's the truth that lingers. If you believe that dignity should never be punished, if you believe that lawsuits can't bury honesty, if you believe that poise isn't silence, it's presence, then share this story. Tell someone what happened. Tag someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more stories like this where power is held accountable, where justice speaks louder than spin, and where truth stands tall, subscribe. Stay loud, stay clear, stay real.